Elara's words hung in the air, swallowed by a sudden, ear-splitting crack. Nara, ignoring her plea, placed her hand upon the crystalline matrix. The structure erupted in a blinding flare of violet light, bathing the chamber in an unearthly glow. A wave of energy pulsed outward, knocking Elara off her feet. She slammed against the crumbling wall, her senses reeling. The air crackled and thrummed, thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something ancient, something indescribably alien. The world seemed to shift and warp around her, the familiar laws of physics bending and breaking. "Nara!" Elara screamed, scrambling to her feet. Nara stood before the energy altar, her body illuminated by the violet glow. Her expression was serene, almost beatific. But the light pouring from the matrix was not healing, not life-giving. It was a sacrifice. An offering to a force beyond comprehension. Then, the ground began to shake. Not a gentle tremor, but a violent, earth-shattering convulsion that threatened to tear the chamber apart. Chunks of the ceiling collapsed, sending showers of dust and debris raining down around them. The crystalline matrix pulsed faster, its violet light intensifying, feeding something growing deep beneath the surface. "What have you done?" Elara asked, her voice laced with fear. Nara turned to her, a single tear tracing a path down her pale cheek. "I have done what I must. Now you must do what you must." Before Elara could respond, the chamber was thrown into chaos. The mechanical monstrosities that had guarded the ruins suddenly lurched into motion, their movements jerky and erratic. The code within their circuits had shifted, twisted by the power that was unleashed. They began to attack each other, tearing and rending at their own kind with savage ferocity. Blades clashed against metal, energy weapons discharged in wild, uncontrolled bursts, painting the chamber with streaks of crimson plasma. The air filled with the sounds of mechanical carnage, the grinding of gears, the snapping of cables, the screech of tearing metal. This, Elara realized with a grim certainty, was the awakening Nara had warned them about. The force that had slumbered beneath cows was stirring, corrupting everything in its path. Jax's voice crackled in her ear, barely audible above the pandemonium. "Captain, readings are off the charts. The gravitational field is fluctuating wildly. I am detecting massive energy surges originating from the planet's core." Elara struggled to maintain her balance, her boots slipping on the debris-strewn floor. Her analytical mind, usually so precise and calculating, was struggling to make sense of the chaos unfolding around her. She knew it was time to choose. Run. It was the sensible option, the pragmatic one. Cut her losses, leave Nara to her fate, and get the hell out of cows before it was too late. Survival had always been her primary directive, and there was nothing to be gained from staying. Only death. But as she looked at Nara, standing serenely before the energy altar, her face illuminated by the violet glow, Elara felt a flicker of something else within her, a feeling she couldn't quite ignore. A sense of responsibility. She couldn't just abandon her, not when the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The relic wasn't just a prize. It was a responsibility. And whatever force was awakening on cows, it needed to be stopped. It was that moment Elara realized she wouldn't just stand as a comic relief. It was the test of what was in her heart, something pure that was not meant to be broken like she thought. She gripped her pulse rifle tighter, her gaze hardening with resolve. "Jax," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the noise of the chaos. "Belay that order. No extraction. I'm going to need you to reroute all available power to my suit's energy shields and weapon systems." "I'm staying." Jax hesitated, his synthesized voice laced with doubt. "Captain, that is highly illogical. The chances of survival are—" "I know the odds, Jax," Elara snapped. "Just do it." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. This wasn't about profit, wasn't about glory. It was about something far more important. It was about making a choice, about standing against the tide of darkness, even if it meant facing certain death. This wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't going to be pretty. But Elara Vance, the mercenary with the scent of wreckage, was ready to face the abyss once more. It was time to fight. Show time, Elara muttered, slamming her fist against the activation rune on her exosuit's gauntlet. The suit flared to life, the energy shield shimmering into existence, deflecting a stray blast of plasma that sizzled harmlessly against the barrier. The heads-up display flashed a series of diagnostics, confirming weapon systems were online and power reserves were at maximum. But that wouldn't be enough. The Guardians, now completely consumed by the will of the awakening entity, surged towards her, a horde of metal and malice driven by a single, all-consuming directive: protect the reliquary. Forget the order of things, Elara and Nara were now the enemy. The first wave was comprised of hulking, bipedal constructs, their energy cannons spitting bolts of searing energy. Elara ducked behind a crumbling pillar, the plasma blasts impacting against the stone with a deafening roar, sending shards of debris flying through the air. They were strong but simple. The moment felt as if they were only getting closer to an eternal sleep, but to have her own, the only way was to make sure that that would never happen. She strafed out from behind the pillar and ripped off a quick-fire burst of plasma bolts towards the center of mass of the monsters, and that was what kept the monster at a slow pace than before. The precision was something learned through all the fighting. They were not easy, and this was not the time to remember. The next was that they kept rushing towards her one last time, to what she aimed towards each one, and they took several stumbles but could not make the end. Elara! Nara's voice echoed urgently through the calms. The ritual takes time. You must buy me as much time as possible. Time is money, sweetheart, Elara replied with a grim smile, switching her pulse rifle to full auto. And right now, time is all we've got. The battle erupted around her, a chaotic ballet of energy and metal. Elara moved with a speed and precision that belied her years, her exosuit enhancing her already considerable combat skills to superhuman levels. She weaved between the lumbering Guardians, dodging their clumsy attacks, and delivering pinpoint bursts of plasma that crippled their systems and sent them crashing to the ground. But for all the skill, numbers, and the will to do something were an issue, she needed something to act with a power she didn't know, and that the more she did, the more it was something. This had to stop. One of the Serpentine Guardians, a coil of gears and cables, slithered through the chaos, its multifaceted eyes locking onto Elara's position. It unleashed a barrage of energy spikes that tore through her shields, leaving burn marks searing across her exosuit. Elara staggered back, gritting her teeth against the pain. As her suit came down, she knew she was in over her head. Then a sudden inspiration hit her. All that tech in the city? It might not all be useful for the world and civilization, but was enough to be repurposed and take some advantage of. She dived between two constructs and fired a pulse. It was more than enough to throw those constructs far back, while she used the parts to build something better, and as if the power was still thrumming to this day, that was the best idea to have ever been and for everyone around. But it wasn't enough. As more and more Guardians closed in, their metallic limbs poised to strike. Elara knew she couldn't hold them off forever. The strength that Nara had and the technology that cows had were fading away. Elara, the seal! Nara's voice came through, almost a cry from it, and came to a realization. It's your time to show the world of what stuff you're made from, Nara. I won't keep them alive. I may not be the strongest of heart, but it's never going to be to waste on you if I need to throw my life to get back your people to your life. The words came out, but she doubted that it would mean nothing. It's not to say or not to feel that the life meant nothing to her, because that's not it. That was what the mercenaries were for. Her purpose here wasn't the relics or the power, it was to leave the past of greed back behind. Then, as quickly as everything was there, she released herself into her purpose. She charged against what remained of the constructs. And that was what was. Elara was now giving her everything for all. And that was the moment where it was finally going to start. The power of such action rippled through the matrix with the power of her sacrifice. Elara saw something change in Nara. She could feel it, like a rush of wind just before a storm, before the power was awakened. The wind was now with Nara. The touch was with Nara. The fire was now with Nara. It could be then. Nara's eyes flared with an unearthly light, and a surge of power erupted from her, engulfing the crystalline matrix in a blinding wave of pure energy. The air crackled, the ground trembled, and the entire reliquary thrummed with the force of creation itself. It was time to face the past, embrace the future, and what was to come. Would Nara save herself, as Elara seemed to point her? Or would the weight of cows be too much to resist? The violet energy cascaded outward, sweeping through the chamber, silencing the corrupted guardians with an abrupt finality. They crumbled like puppets with their strings cut, their metallic limbs collapsing in inert heaps. The grinding of gears, the crackling of energy, the symphony of destruction, it all ceased, leaving behind an unnerving silence. Then, the shaking stopped. The tremors subsided. The oppressive weight that had been crushing Elara's chest began to lift. She gasped for air, her lungs burning, her body trembling with exhaustion. She lay amidst the wreckage, her exosuit sparking and smoking, feeling as if every bone in her body had been shattered and reassembled. Slowly, with agonizing effort, she pushed herself to her feet. Her vision swam, the chamber still bathed in an eerie, residual glow. She spotted Nara near the energy altar. Nara stood motionless, her hands still resting on the crystalline matrix. The violet light had dimmed, leaving her skin pale and luminous. Her golden eyes were closed, her expression serene, almost otherworldly. For a terrifying moment, Elara feared the ritual had taken its toll, that she had traded one kind of death for another. "Nara?" Elara croaked, her voice raw and strained. Nara's eyes flickered open, a spark of life returning to their depths. She took a deep breath, a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. The crystalline matrix hummed softly beneath her touch, as if acknowledging her presence. "It is done," she whispered, her voice stronger now, imbued with a newfound sense of peace. "The gate is sealed. The awakening is averted." Elara let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Relief washed over her, a wave so intense that it almost buckled her knees. She stumbled towards Nara, her steps unsteady on the debris-strewn floor. "Are you okay?" Elara asked, her hand reaching out, hesitating before making contact. She wasn't sure if Nara was real or still just some kind of construct or ghost. Nara simply gave Elara a glance. "I am as I was before, still Nara." She laughed, and then a deep cough took the joy from her face. "The important thing is, we did it for your world. This may just be some crazy things happening to me, but for what has happened to this one, it's everything." Nara did something unexpected, and as much as Elara hated surprises, it would just be as expected that the world wasn't at her heel. She said, "You don't belong here, but here you did what could not be done. Why are you just chasing money instead of your own truth? Don't you think is the most dangerous thing of all?" The comment struck into Elara's mind because, as Nara said, that was just a question, and what has come out would be the most powerful fact to consider for her survival. And something, said and unsaid, was that now and here she had a second chance at life. Elara stared at her. You can have those thoughts running along, but her work had always been what drove her, so as they made their escape, she had an answer that came to the most inner parts of herself. "Maybe so. But what is it for you? Because I can see this in you." The both laughed. At the sky with no God, a world with ghosts, for a future where they were the hope to keep it together, whatever that thing meant. What were they going to do now that a plan, and more or less they made it? They moved back to a crater, as the light shone. A new dawn. Always remember, only in death comes new light, Elara Vance. Elara gave a look with a silent cry. The time was to get out of that place. Elara and Nara stood silhouetted against the horizon, the ruins of cows stretching out behind them like a monument to shattered dreams. The violet lightning had faded, leaving the sky a bruised and battered gray. But a sliver of pale light had begun to creep over the horizon, hinting at the possibility of a new dawn. "There," Elara said, pointing towards a faint shimmer in the distance. "Looks like someone finally answered our call." The approaching vessel, a sleek, black cruiser, sliced through the atmosphere with a silent grace. Its design was unfamiliar to Elara, not human, not Krell, not anything she recognized from the charted sectors. It was elegant, almost organic, with curves that seemed to flow and shift like water. They are different, Nara said, her golden eyes narrowed as she studied the approaching ship. Not like anything I have seen before. Different how? Elara asked, her hand instinctively reaching for her pulse rifle. One could never be too careful. Nara shook her head, her expression unreadable. I cannot explain. It is a feeling. As if they are both old and new. As the ship drew closer, its alien features became more apparent. It had no visible weapons, no obvious defensive systems. Instead, its surface seemed to shimmer with a subtle, almost imperceptible energy field. The ship's presence made Elara's instruments go mad. The thought made her feel very alert. And to see more with the next one. They met, then gave a sign of, "Let's make it," then stood in front of it for many seconds that felt longer, with the sound of the door echoing all over the land. "Well, there are your friends," Elara said, breaking the silence. "Ready to find out what kind of reception we are about to get?" As they looked on and the ship came closer, there was Nara, but in her face, the change was real. Now it wasn't pain, now it wasn't suffering. It was hope, a spark in her voice that almost reminded her of better days. But after having done that, all she had to do was follow through as a ghost. But as coal, on the other hand, was as clear as the water. Let's see if this trip was about to go or if I should really think about that retirement. And all for something I have never intended to be done, and yet I have seen myself do. Elara was the spark, Nara was the path. Then, looking from afar to her savior, Nara then held his shoulder and winked for just a millisecond and said, with her breath again, "I swear I am going to protect you from what's to come, or my name is not Nara." The airlock hissed open, a bright beam of light spilling out into the desolate landscape. Two figures emerged, silhouettes against the blinding light. "Shall we?" Elara said, turning to Nara with a wry smile. Nara nodded, her golden eyes gleaming with a newfound resolve. Together. As they walked towards the ship, Elara couldn't help but steal a glance back at the ruins of cows. The violet lightning had faded, the wind had calmed, and a sliver of pale light was now beginning to illuminate the horizon. It was a small, fragile glimmer of hope in a world of ashes. But it was there, burning bright, fueled by the unlikely alliance of a cynical mercenary and a haunted engineer. The road ahead would be long and arduous, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as they stepped onto the alien ship, bound for the stars, Elara knew that they were ready. They each knew that whatever happened to them, if they lived, if they died, nothing would be as they were before. The ramp of the alien cruiser hummed as it extended, a bridge between the ruins of the past and the unknown potential of the future. The metal was cool to the touch, almost alive, resonating with the same subtle energy that pulsed through Nara herself. Elara paused, her gaze sweeping over the desolate landscape one last time. The wreckage of cows stretched out behind them, a bleak testament to the destructive power of ambition and the enduring scars of loss. She knew they were leaving behind more than just a dying planet. They were leaving behind ghosts, echoes of a civilization that would forever haunt their steps. But she also knew they were carrying something else with them, something far more important, a spark. A tiny, fragile flame of hope ignited in the face of unimaginable darkness. Nara stood beside her, her golden eyes reflecting the alien light of the ship. She had removed her helmet, revealing the full extent of her ethereal beauty, her silver hair cascading down her shoulders like liquid moonlight. But beneath the ethereal grace, Elara saw a newfound resolve, a steely determination that mirrored her own. "We cannot allow this to happen again," Nara said, her voice firm, devoid of the sorrow that had haunted it before. "What we have seen here, the hunger that lurks beneath cows, it must be stopped. We are the last ones that are now left." Elara nodded, her gaze hardening with purpose. "Then we stop it. Whatever it takes." She knew in that moment that her life wasn't one, but they now had two. Nara and her touched shoulders, as Nara finished with what she had to propose. They needed to do something that was more than their reach. "To what's broken and doesn't have to repeat itself," both proclaimed. The two looked and began to turn, taking his in her hand. Those were their new worlds. They would face the dark side, and the bright day would never be the same for a long of their adventures. As they stepped onto the ramp, leaving the ashen plains of cows behind them, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that their journey had just begun. They had survived, they had made an alliance, and had a great purpose to face, and that had made them strong and more powerful than ever before. But as to sea, both were a power. A relic that would last forever.